time. Something has got to happen because we can no longer go down the path that we're going down. This country won't last another 6 months. This country won't last another 12 months if something doesn't happen. So it's time to flip the switch. It's time to get involved. It's time to move the line forward. And if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I don't care what flip the switch is. I don't care if that means that all of this nonsense is nonsense, or if some of it's true. All right. Good evening, warriors, world patriots, my fellow Americans. My name is Mike. I'm the host of Liberty Warrior. Give me liberty or give me death. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. Welcome to this Tuesday evening, January 4th, 2022. Man, I almost said 21 right there. I got to get used to 22. Starting a new year. How many of you out there have already filled out rent checks, mortgage checks, paid bills, and accidentally wrote 21 down instead of 22? How many of you has that happened to you every year, trying to get used to the new year? I know some of us, we do that every now and again. Fortunately enough, all of my bills are paid online, so I don't have to worry about that. Anyway, good evening. Hope y'all are having a great week. It's nice to be back on the big show. We take Sundays and Mondays off. I know a few people I seen him in chat on headline hits and stuff. Hey, I couldn't find you last night. It's because we're not on. We're not on Sundays or Mondays. Now Shane does a show on Sunday evening called Late Night Captain Finger Late Night, so he's on Sunday evenings. But as far as this show here, we take Sundays and Mondays off, and then of course I have a rigorous schedule for the entire week, trying to keep up with everything that we got going on in this new year, and a lot of stuff still yet to unfold. So stay tuned, folks. We got a lot to share with you. I think a lot of it you're going to really enjoy, becoming a network. So we're going to put out more and more content during the day. Not just me, but we're bringing other people on board as well, and just a lot of fun stuff that we're going to put out there to you guys. So I've got Andy with us tonight. He's in the waiting room. Captain Finger is going to join us. We're going to talk about a little bit about the economy, some things that I'm seeing over in Wall Street. I'd like to get Andy's take on some of it. Plus, he's going to give us the Tuesday update specials at Miles Franklin. So those of you who enjoy your precious metals, Miles Franklin is who we go through, who I go through. Great service, great quality, and you just can't go wrong when you have a 1 ounce silver coin in your hand. So I play with that during the show. I bought myself a Christmas gift this year and secured a little bit of silver just in case. So if you guys want to do that, again, you can reach out to Andy at Miles Franklin. And that email is info@milesfranklin.com. So I'll go ahead and bring Andy out. We'll start the conversation. How you doing this evening, Andy?
Mike, good to see you. Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year. It's 2022. Hopefully it's better than the last two combined, right?
Yeah, it might be tough to not be. Let's hope so.
Absolutely. So just real quick with Miles Franklin, you want to touch on the specials that you guys are running this week?
Yeah, I did an interview earlier this morning and struggled to find a special. In the 31 years I've been doing this, Mike, getting a product at a reasonable price and in a fashion that doesn't make people wait weeks and weeks has become much more difficult. We're having to buy product 90 days in advance these days, pay up front for it, hedge it, run logistics on it, and track it the whole way through. It's almost like we're running a logistics company. It's night and day, 180 degrees different from anything that we've ever done as a company. So it was a little bit of a challenge. Fortunately, as I was trying to choose something, I was notified by my operations that our truck with 40,000 brand new Buffalo rounds came in 5 days early. So we have 40,000 brand new silver Buffalo rounds at $2.99 over the price of silver. That's the best price spot-wise over silver that I've seen in the past year for sure. So that's it right there. That's what it looks like. $2.99 over spot, and we have 40,000 live on the floor, ready to be shipped immediately.
I love my Buffalo rounds. I bought a handful of them. I love them. We talk about it on the show quite a bit about buying Coca-Cola versus Shasta. This is Shasta for me. I try to stretch my dollar as far as it'll go. And you know what? A 1 ounce of silver is 1 ounce of silver, no matter what you stamp on it. So I enjoy the Buffalo rounds.
Yeah, I agree. There are 4 or 5 refineries in North America that make rounds, and they all make the Buffalo round. The Buffalo round is, it's as close to Coca-Cola as you're going to get without it being a government issued legal tender coin. In fact, if you didn't know any better and you were to look at it, you would swear it is a government legal tender coin. The one differentiating factor is that there's no dollar sign on it. There's no face value on it. That's really the only difference. And it's interesting that most of my clients abhor government policy and edict, yet prefer government issued coins. Not quite sure why. In this case, the Buffalo Round is as close to a government issued coin as you'll find without it being issued by a sovereign mint. The refineries that make them are all AAA rated, super high quality. And, we will pull those coins out and weigh them and test their density and test all that kind of stuff to make sure that they're all legit, and they are. And so it's a good choice at a great price, and the availability makes it that much better as they're immediately available for delivery.
Absolutely. And, depending on if you guys have to, make transactions and move stuff around, it really doesn't take that long. It didn't take that long for me. Um, 10 days, 10 to 14 days, within 10 days once they're shipped, but it really didn't take that long to get mine. So if you've already have cash on hand and you guys can do an ACH um, transfer from your bank or whatnot, it really doesn't take much time at all. They showed up, they were secure in a box. I opened them up, and it was truly an amazing sight to open those up for the first time. That's the first precious metals that I've ever really had my hands on. So I enjoyed them. It looks like by my index that gold is at 1814 today, and silver's around 2308.
That sounds about right. It's interesting because it really sold off into the new year, and that was something I was somewhat expecting, a sell-off, and yet that massive sell-off has been completely erased. As we were down into the 1780s, I want to say, and into the 22s, right before New Year's, and it shot right back up. And it's also important to note that despite the liquidation or the sell-off in metals, the managed money traders actually have increased their positioning. And this is important to me because I've been talking a lot about this one trader on COMEX who is long 40,000 contracts of gold. That's a lot. Each contract's a 100-ounce bar. That's 4 million ounces of gold. That's $7.5 billion worth of gold this person is controlling. And this person is in a group that we've talked about on your show called the others. They're a category of traders on the COMEX market whose really their characteristic has been to take metal off of the exchange. And this is something I'm expecting. In fact, I was a little surprised that they didn't actually pull it off the exchanges. They were December contracts. They rolled them forward into the new year. But this group, these managed money traders, have been systematically pulling tremendous amounts of gold and silver off the exchange. But, when you talk about one trader controlling almost $8 billion worth of gold, you have to understand that when you buy contracts on the COMEX market, you have to post a margin account. And that margin account is kind of, it's what you have to have in your account as maintenance to hold the position. To hold that kind of position, you're talking almost $350 million that you would have to have in cash sitting in that account just to maintain the exposure to those contracts. And if and when the person does take delivery, you're talking nearly $8 billion worth of gold that person would control. And this is no joke. And when we talk about the biggest money in the world accumulating precious metals, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
And there's still a lot of countries out there that are grabbing for the precious metals. I haven't read anything lately, but I know Russia was there, China was there. There were a lot of people seem like they were reaching out, trying to secure more and more precious metals. Is that grab still going on, Andy?
Oh, yeah. You have the Dutch National Bank, the Bank of Turkey, the Bank of Poland, the Bank of Hungary, the Bank of Austria. You have the German Bundesbank. You have Russia for the first time, and I don't know how, maybe ever, admitting that they have more gold in their reserves than they do dollars. You have the Bank of China. You have the Bank of Serbia. You have the Bank of Singapore. They're all massively accumulating gold. And if it weren't for 4 or 5 very, very large commercial bank traders holding down the price of gold and silver to the point where they're billions of dollars underwater right now, the price would be much, much, much higher. And I think it's allowing a lot of the biggest money in the world to reposition while they misdirect the public with price, they accumulate the physical. It's the no look past. I don't know if I've talked about on your show or not, but a book that has meant a lot to me is The Art of War. And The Art of War is a book that's taught in every major business school. It was written in the 5th century, I believe, the 5th century BC by a Chinese military strategist named Sun Tzu. And this book is not just a paperweight. It's taught in West Point, mandatory reading at CIA. It's taught in almost every major business school on corporate hierarchy, or in law schools on formulating arguments. For you football fans out there, Bill Belichick reads it to formulate game strategy. The whole concept of the book is misdirection, and it's incredibly pervasive, especially in business, especially on Wall Street, especially at the highest levels, where they misdirect the public with rhetoric and with price to accomplish a goal. And that goal in this case is de-dollarizing and repositioning. And they're holding down the paper price with a tremendous amount of leverage with one hand, talking rhetoric out of their mouth, while the other hand that no one's looking at is gobbling up physical metal. And this goes across the spectrum, from the central banks to the commercial banks to the sovereign wealth funds and family offices. These are the others, the family offices and the sovereign wealth funds, the others that I talk about on COMEX. The biggest money in the world is quietly repositioning out of dollars, and they're using the manipulated, levered paper price to do so.
Got you. There was some stuff out in the news this morning talking about Mark. Is it Chaikin from Wall Street, and he'd put out something. A strange day is coming to America, and the article that was attached was November 4th of 2021, but they'd put it back out in the news today. It was kind of circulating. Is there anything on that? Is there anything that Wall Street's starting to put out that kind of raises your eyebrow a little bit there, Andy?
I haven't seen that, but there are a lot of things that Wall Street is doing that is starting to raise my eyebrows. One of the things that I've talked about lately is Bank of America published something a few weeks ago called their Flow Show report, which showed $900 billion in inflows into the equity market over the past year, 2021. That is almost $110 billion more than the last 19 previous years combined. You're talking almost 22 decades worth of inflows into the U.S. stock market in 1 year. And you couple that with the largest amount, almost $80 billion in insider selling. So as the public is flying into the market, piling in, you have the insiders like Elon Musk selling $11-12 billion worth of Tesla. You have the CEO of Microsoft selling 50% of his holdings, and $80 billion in total in insider selling, meaning the people who run the companies are selling as everyone else is buying. That is not a good sign. And this is being done with record margin debt, with record call options, with record ETF leverage, with massive amounts of Fed-created stimulus and Fed-created easy money that the hedge funds, as an example, can borrow at under 2%, plow into the stock market, push the prices sky high, earn huge bonuses, jack the prices up, sell, make a massive profit, cover their stupid loan that was next to nothing, and create distortions in price that are extraordinary. So, you got the Fed talking about tapering, which it doesn't mean they're going to stop buying mortgage-backed securities and government bonds. It just means they're going to buy less of them. And this in and of itself it's supposed to slowly, as they would like to think, create some sort of normal price discovery. But I think we are a long ways away from that. And quite to the contrary, I don't think they will be able to taper. I think what's going to happen is the market will throw up when they get anywhere near 3% on the long bond. The market will throw up like it did in 2019, and they will then reverse course and probably add more stimulus than they ever have. We have reached a point where you have, on one hand, you have inflation by the CPI running at 7%. And the CPI doesn't include things like food and energy and housing, the things that are most inflated, while the interest rate on the 10-year Treasury, which is considered the benchmark, is at 1.3%. So you're talking a negative real return right now of 5.5%. You're guaranteed to lose 5.5% on those treasuries. So when you talk about inflation and the problems that we're seeing with the supply chain and consumer price inflation, there's only one way to end it. And the only way to end it is to raise the federal funds rate or to raise the level of interest. This is, for example, if we go back to 1980, you had Paul Volcker come in and raise interest rates to 20%. And this is how he killed the inflation. And when you look at it right now at 1.3% on the Treasury and 7% interest rate, they would basically have to raise interest rates by almost 700 basis points or 7% just to stop inflation. But the thing of it is, real inflation right now is closer to 15%, as we know. But just to mimic or to get above the CPI stated rate of inflation, in order to slow things down, these problems, they're going to have to raise rates up to, at least 7%, which will blow up the entire economy. So I guess what I'm getting at is they can't raise rates. They won't raise rates. There's going to be more inflation. There's going to be, if I had to guess, price controls. They're going to tell people that they can't raise prices anymore for a period of like 90 days, just like President Nixon did in 1971. It's the path of least resistance, because if the Democrats let inflation roar, they won't get reelected. If they crater the markets by raising interest rates and collapse everything, they won't get reelected. The easiest way to do this is to create price controls. And when you do that, you create massive distortions. And I think that's what will happen. When that happens, you have quality of goods and services deteriorating, because the supply chain shortages get exacerbated because people do less when they're paid less, and higher quality costs more. We are entering a period of time, Mike, where these kinds of things are going to happen, where we're running out of options. So when you talk about Wall Street, I think that what the Fed has chosen to this point is Wall Street in favor of the US dollar. And in reality, I don't think they have any other path but to continue to try to prop up the markets for as long as they can, or the whole thing just collapses under its own weight. So I'm very concerned about Wall Street. At the same time, I would say to you, there's a good chance it could go much higher. If the Fed has anything to do about it, they will let it continue to roar higher until the whole thing just collapses under its own weight. So, I think this is a very precarious position. 2022 will be a very, very interesting year.
Absolutely. And talking about the economy, talking about the debt ceiling, and all the stimulus packages and all the rescue packages they've been throwing at us, and the $2 billion a day they pump into our economy. Eric Adams urges businesses to return to office. We can't spend trillions on every variant, and some can't work from home. So, they want to shut things down again. They want to pump another few trillion into the economy for stimulus. They want people to stay home. It's scary to see this happening, and all the stuff that they want to continue to do lockdowns. Every variant can't be another 11 trillion. Is his quote. He's very concerned about the money that we're pumping into this economy to try to keep it afloat, while businesses in blue states, blue cities continue to stay closed, or they're regulated. They can only have 25% capacity, mandates and restrictions that, employees are walking off the job or getting fired. People won't patronize them, because they won't comply to any of the mandates, which is hurting the businesses, which hurt the economy. And the backbone of America is small business. So your thoughts on that, Andy?
40% of gross domestic product was usually what the small businesses represented. And the target of this evisceration is the small business and the middle class. I mean, you have coffee shops only open on the weekends. You have restaurants that are very thinly staffed. You have a massive labor shortage due to the fact, yet unemployment, if you look at the actual unemployment rate, it's not much different than before COVID started. But if you look at the labor participation rate, it's way down. And so you have people that are just not working and they're not looking for a job. They're being paid to be unproductive. And this directly affects the small and medium-sized businesses, the backbone of this economy, who can't get anyone to come work for them. Where you see signs for $18 an hour at McDonald's, where you're seeing massive number of people quit their jobs, and it's going to crush the middle class. It's going to crush the small businessman, and everyone will be ordering everything that they need from Mother Amazon before it's all said and done. The big corporations are the benefactor of all of this, as the small businesses get crushed. And it's a sad state of affairs. It really is. And the unintended consequences, or maybe they were intended, but the consequences of locking down the economy. And this is one of the reasons I moved to Florida. The consequences of locking down the economy, you're looking at 200,000 small businesses that have been shuttered and will probably never come back. So yeah, it's definitely real. And when you look at the infection rate with the new variant, it's just a matter of time before they start implementing more controls and shutting more down. And it's almost as if they're targeting right now. You can see what's happening to travel, as 8,000 flights were canceled last week. So you shut down interstate travel, you shut down tourism, you shut down the small businesses. You're decimating the economy and the small business, and that has represented forever 40% of GDP in this country. It's not a good thing.
Yeah. Well, this is something else that I'm seeing here in the article for the economy too, which we've talked about several times with you, Andy. But Biden's oil scheme fails. Oil climbs back above $80 a barrel as OPEC sees a strong demand despite the sickness, the next variant. So it seems like other countries aren't slowing down. They're still producing, but yet America is under all these restrictions. The current administration came in and really tightened the screws on restrictions. And we went from energy independent to now begging OPEC for more barrels of oil. What are your thoughts on the petrodollar and the direction that we're heading for that, and what we see with the oil prices now?
Well, I've been saying for at least a couple of months, I believe it is the Achilles heel of this country. For people who don't know, gold backed the U.S. dollar really until 1971. And in 1971, well, in 69 and 70, you had de Gaulle from France, who was sending warships over to New York Harbor filled with dollar bills. And prior to 1971, foreign governments could exchange their dollars for gold. And that's exactly what de Gaulle did from France when he realized that the U.S. was producing more treasuries, selling more treasuries, and printing more dollars than they had back behind it with gold at Fort Knox. So he started bringing all his dollars across the Atlantic to New York Harbor to trade them in for gold. And at that point, and over those 2 years, 50% of all the gold held in the Treasury was depleted. And Nixon closed the gold window in 71. 3 years later, in 74, now for those 3 years, the dollar was backed by nothing, completely and totally fiat. 3 years later, Henry Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia and struck a deal with the Saudi kingdom and said, hey, we'll protect you, we'll sell you arms, and we'll protect you, but you will value oil only in dollars through OPEC worldwide. And since 1974, it's been the protection of the Saudi kingdom by the United States that has given us the world reserve status, the petrodollar status. And as we've talked about before on your show here, right after we left Afghanistan in a very unharmonious way, the day after, Russia announced a joint military cooperation agreement with Saudi Arabia. The day after that, with Nigeria. The day after that, they announced that they have hypersonic ICBMs on all of their nuclear submarines, which the State Department has subsequently come out and said they are very concerned about. It's a technology that we do not have. These are missiles that circle the globe in a matter of hours and hit the ground at the speed of an asteroid. They can't be knocked down, basically. And so when you talk about the petrodollar status, it's our Achilles heel. When you look at a country like Saudi Arabia, they're selling their oil for dollars that are being printed ad nauseum, and the treasuries that they would normally buy are paying 5.5% under the rate of inflation. So we could wake up one morning and see an announcement by Saudi Arabia saying we've decided to issue oil in other currencies now that we have a joint military cooperation agreement with our friends here in Russia. We feel comfortable in opening this up to euro and yuan and ruble and other currencies. And at that point, you would see a flood of dollars come rushing home as other countries who have to have dollars as the basis of their currencies in order to buy energy or oil, dump dollars, send them home to the United States at the time when we least need them. When inflation is already roaring, now you get a massive influx of offshore dollars that would immediately exacerbate that inflation and pump up interest rates and really create a problem. I believe that is the Achilles heel of this country. And I think there's a high probability that it happens. For 50 years nearly, we have been the sole protector of the Saudi kingdom until September of this last year, where now Russia is doing the exact same thing. And, I don't think we want to go to war with Russia. And when you talk about Nigeria, the other country that Russia is protecting, that's part of the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative, the biggest infrastructure project in human history that China is embarked upon by connecting Asia and Africa. So if we declare war on Nigeria, we are by de facto declaring war on China. We are in a position where of great weakness as it pertains to the petrodollar. So as we continue to inflate away the value of our currency, as we continue to try and sell treasuries at 5.5% under the rate of inflation, and as we continue to show the rest of the world our weakness in the way that we handled our affairs in Afghanistan, as an example, we've created a problem with the petrodollar. And I do think it is the Achilles heel. I do think that there will come a time when other countries start to really move away from the dollar. And you can see that right now in the deals that Russia has struck, similar to Saudi Arabia. Russia just did the exact same thing with India. They've already struck the same unilateral trade deals for jet fuel and for oil with China. So you have the biggest economies in the world outside the US that are building infrastructure in the Belt Road Initiative and are trading amongst themselves, usurping the dollar for settlement in oil and trading in euro and in yuan and ruble and other currencies, the new Chinese digital yuan. They are settling all of these instruments outside the dollar. So to your point, Mike, it is probably the biggest issue that we will face, I think, over the next couple of years, as I think you will see a push away from the dollar as the petrodollar, singular petrodollar, and other currencies will be accepted.
Yeah. And, we keep looking at the current administration, and it seems like the lights are on, but nobody's home. There's not really, I've never really seen them come out and address inflation head on. I've never seen them come up with a plan on how to maneuver and maybe head off inflation. There's no real sense of urgency to it. Just maybe opening up fracking again, and maybe opening up the oil fields to maybe help with some of the inflation, some of the work, some of people that need to get back to work. That doesn't seem to be in the horizon for them. They're going to keep the same stance on it, which is everything's locked down, no federal fracking. Biden him and his administration just seem like they really don't care. Even with the supply chain being an issue, they just say, it's working itself out. So I'm very frustrated at looking at them and just seeing the lack of confidence that the American people have in him. A lot of polls going out, a lot of people not happy with him, saying that he's not doing a good job. He's horrible at inflation. He's horrible at a lot of things. And when is this presidency ever going to grab traction and actually start moving the needle in the other direction? Is there ever going to be a time for that?
No, he's a lost cause in my opinion, and he's shown no strength, no leadership whatsoever. Inflation is out of control. He's done a horrible job in managing COVID. All he did was blame Trump, and now he's trying to do the same things that he was doing after the fact, too late. But as far as inflation is concerned, look, it's here to stay. Again, let's go back to 1980 when you had inflation roaring. The only way that you can get inflation in check right now would be to raise interest rates. And you have to raise interest rates above the rate of inflation. And when you have the CPI saying inflation is 6.8%, you need to have 7% interest rates just to have a positive rate of return. In other words, if you own a CD that's paying you 7% right now, which you'll never find, but if you did, you'd be making 0.2% above the rate of inflation, right? So you're barely running, and that's the stated rate. If you have a CD paying you 1%, like you would find right now, or 2%, just in terms of the stated rate of inflation, the CPI, you're 5%, you're losing 5% purchasing power compounding per year for 10 years. And that the real rate of inflation is much closer to 15%. If you go back to 1980 and go to shadowstats.com, John Williams, a brilliant guy who all he does is show the way that the measurements used to be calculated prior to 1980 before they changed the metrics to fit an inflationary agenda. And he'll tell you inflation's at 15%, but even if you believe the CPI, we're 5.5%, 6% below the rate of inflation. And the only way to kill it is the way Volcker did it, raised interest rates to 18%. But you do that in this economy that is so over leveraged in debt, the whole thing implodes. Stocks, bonds, and real estate, all three, the three pillars of wealth in this country will immediately collapse. And it will create the mother of all depressions, and it'll be the greatest depression of all time. So I think that inflation will be the choice that they will choose. Politicians going all the way back to the Romans when they would cut the edges of the coins and debase their currency, all governments throughout all of time have chosen the path of inflation and currency debasement over austerity, the tough decisions. And this administration will be no different. And so, here comes the great reset that everyone talks about, where you just blow everything up through inflation. And we're so far down the road that if you try to reverse it, you have a massive collapse of the stock market, the real estate market implodes, and the bond market, which is the mother of all bubbles, absolutely collapses. And this is the trifecta. This would be your reset right there. So I think either they will inflate away the debt as long as they can until the rest of the world just says, fuck it. I don't want dollars anymore. I don't want treasuries anymore. I don't want equities at the highest valuations ever. And if you're put yourself in the place of a European who's buying our bonds. You're buying bonds, losing 5% per year, plus you have the currency risk involved. It's a loser. And that's why the Fed is the only one stupid enough to buy the bonds. The only other people that would buy the bonds would be like a corporation with, like Apple. You got $1 billion. Where do you put it? Can't put it in the banks. That's not safe. You can't put it in the stock market at the highest valuations ever. So you put it in the bond market and get back 95% of your money, and you're happy with that. And this is the environment that we're in right now.
That's crazy just to think that. Welcome to the show, Shane. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm all right, I guess, for the circumstance.
Hi, Shane.
Andy, how are you, man?
I'm good, buddy. How are you? Happy New Year.
Same to you, man.
Thank you.
There's a lot of talk, Shane. To jump over to you real quick, a lot of talk that Trump has canceled his speech on Thursday. Any word on that?
Haven't heard anything except right here in the chat. Well, kind of odd that he canceled that. Someone said that
I had something sent to me earlier. Let me check it out real quick. But I what's the purpose of him canceling?
Someone said he was threatened, and anybody around him. So I don't know how true that is. That's just what I read also. So, but while Mike's looking at that, Andy, I got a question for you. With the Evergrande, and which is 30% of China's market, What's that going to do to the stock market since they're so big in it?
Well, the word is systemic and contagion. The systemic reaction to, it's not just Evergrande. They're all of the home building stocks and large developers in China are starting to collapse, and it's the contagion where a lot of people, a lot of corporations here in the United States, banks have interests in bond payments and interest in Evergrande, and so it's a systemic reaction. The problem with all of these markets is that they are so incestuous, and then you have insurance companies backing up the investments of the banks and through the I forgot the name of the program that they use, but like AIG, the reinsurer companies, they will insure or reinsure the investments that are put on by the banks. And as one collapses, the other collapses, and you have a systemic nature. I don't know if China's going to bail them out, if they're going to stop the bleeding, but I think it's just emblematic of what will happen when the dominoes start to fall. A bank like Deutsche Bank, who is one of the largest derivative holders in the world, what happens if they collapse? And what if they have a large position in Evergrande? And if Deutsche Bank collapses, what happens to then Bank of America, who has large interests with Deutsche Bank? It's all very systemic. Quite frankly, a lot of people thought that there would already be bigger problems with Evergrande, as they've missed bond payments and have officially defaulted. I guess we'll have to see, but it will be more things like this that will at some point, I think, push things over. And I don't think you'll just see it in places like China. You'll see it here in the States too. Pension problems like in Chicago, or Illinois pension problems, or there's just a myriad of things that could trigger that moment. Evergrande certainly being one of them, but it's the systemic nature really that we have to be concerned about, because Evergrande is not in a bubble. They have there are banks and insurance companies all throughout the world that are either invested directly with them or insuring investments that others have made. And this is why AIG had to be bailed out when Lehman collapsed, because you're reinsuring the people making these foolish bets, and they would have blown up the entire system if they weren't bailed out. And that's the kind of thing that people are afraid of, that moment where we cross the line, where you can't bail out all of these large institutions and they start to pull everyone down with them and the entire system. We're not there yet, but certainly it's a domino in the chain, and I guess we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, that's a concerning thought. And so far, all the roads that you've described to us, Andy, and I'm not trying to put out any fear porn, I'm trying to put out reality. Whether they use inflation and come in and raise interest rates, that would collapse things, or we continue down the path we're going and have a full collapse. It just seems like some type of reset is in the horizon. Would you disagree with that?
No, and I mean, ask yourself what would happen to the economy if interest rates rose. Instead of being able to get a mortgage at 3%, what if it's 8% or 9%? What does that do to the housing market? What does it do to the stock market? If you're getting a 2% dividend on a stock, let's say, and you can earn 9% on a treasury, why would anyone buy stocks at the highest valuation ever and risk the market moving down for a 2% dividend when you can get 9% with safety from a treasury? And so interest rates can't rise. It will kill the stock market. It will blow up the bond market. It will crush the real estate market. And if they do rise, it happens all at the same time. It's the perfect storm. And this is why they won't really raise rates. They may talk about tapering, but here again, tapering is not stopping buying bonds and mortgage-backed securities. It's just buying less of them. And, it's just a bunch of jawboning and lip service. They can't stop. And it isn't fear porn. There's a fine line between pessimism and reality. And it's a drag to have to look at things this way, but this is where we are. You talk about 50% of every dollar ever created in the history of the United States in the last 2 years. And so the numbers are getting so big at the lowest interest rates in human history. If they rise, the whole thing collapses. With with a $30 trillion debt, every 1% rise in interest rates is what, $300 billion in interest rate payments that they have to pay. It's over. As I often say, a trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. The numbers become so big at some point, you have to start to realize that this is reality, and what can you do to get out of the way of this? They've done a great job of keeping the ball up in the air a lot longer than I thought they would, for sure. But look, when you see record insider selling, coupled with 20 years worth of inflows into the equity markets in 1 year, that should be all you really need to see. The insiders are the ones who would be able to tell you what the forward guidance is, where they think the market will be. If they're selling, what does that tell you? $80 billion of insider selling, and that's a record by a long margin.
Here's a question for you, Andy, from John Estabrooks. Did you see the case being moved forward against Chase for price fixing on silver? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. I mean, JP Morgan paid a $920 million fine last year to the Justice Department for doing just that. They keep paying these fines, and yet the fine that they paid was a deferred prosecution agreement where they had to keep their nose clean, and yet they keep paying fines for other areas like LIBOR and forward futures market in currencies, the FX market, and other things. Look, they admitted to it. They paid a $920 million fine. I don't know. Supposedly, they're not short anymore. In fact, Ted Butler will tell you that they're actually long in the futures market. Right now, the big short is Bank of America. And they're the massive short in both gold and silver on the COMEX. And while JP Morgan manipulated the price, they accumulated 1.2 billion ounces of silver. That's 12 times what the Hunt brothers tried to buy in 1980. They've accumulated north of 40 million ounces of gold. This is the largest physical position of metal the world has ever seen, and they're holding it. And while at the same time they paid a $920 million fine and admitted guilt for doing just what he's talking about. Now, I don't know, what else they could do. Quite frankly, it was a slap on the wrist. A $920 million fine to most companies would be, good night, Irene. But JP Morgan makes over $1 billion in profit a month. And so that's nothing to them. In fact, that same year, when they paid the fine last year, their metals desk made $1 billion. And they paid $920 million fine. They walked away 80 million up while accumulating massive quantities of metal at subsidized prices.
I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this question, Andy, and I don't know where Harvest Mary Moon is located. I don't know if this is something that's national or just in her area only. But she says, Andy, I went to the jewelry store to sell my broken real silver, and they only want gold everywhere here. Wherever here is in her hometown, they're not buying. It looks like any kind of what do you call that type of silver, Andy?
Sterling, probably sterling silver. There are places that will buy it. We have a smelter. We are able to melt things down and buy sterling silver and whatnot. It's oftentimes a little bit more of a pain than it's worth. A lot of times people think that they have silver and it really isn't. If you own sterling silver flatware and table settings, on the back of the pieces it will say sterling. And I think it's interesting that you have shops that only want to buy gold. That should tell you what ultimately people think of gold and where ultimately it is going. I think silver is the value of a generation. And if I had flatware or jewelry that I really didn't use or have any use for, I would trade it in for silver coins or bars. The difference being the ability to negotiate with coins and bars when no one knows the value of a necklace. You have to first, weigh it, make sure it's real. And then if it's gold, you have to do the computation for 14 karat or 18 karat or 22 karat. Excuse me. So yeah, if people have that, we might be able to help. They're certainly willing to send us, if they want, send us a email at info@milesfranklin. Take some pictures of what you have, be specific. And we'd be happy to, in most cases, to buy it, give you 100% value, take no commission on the buy side, and apply the proceeds to coins and bars that will give you greater liquidity.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, and folks, we can take some questions here if you want to either put them in the chat like you have been, or I can drop the link when Andy and Shane are ready, and we can take some live calls here. But I'm sure there's somebody out there just kind of listening to this information. It's a little overwhelming. I know this first time I had you on, Andy, it was really overwhelming for me trying to wrap my head around everything that you put out there. But now that you've been on a few times, I'm starting to really understand what you say and the things that you're telling us. So it's a lot easier for me now than it was the first time. But with that being said, there's probably people out there saying, okay, well, if this is inevitable, how can I protect my family? I know that none of us are really truly financial advisors, but just some words of advice out there. I try to tell people that listen, just always be prepared in some form or manner, prepped up, not over prepped, but just prepped to where you have, a few extra cans of food in your pantry, two sources of water, a power source, weather being a factor. And we've seen, what's happened here in America, Colorado, specifically recently with the fires and people losing everything and being displaced, natural disasters around the world. So being prepared even for natural disasters, and then even possibly, something that happens with the economy. What else could we give them for advice to be a little bit prepped, so that they can take care of their families?
Well, besides the obvious, home protection, gun, food, the obvious, gold and silver. I would also have as much spendable cash as you can have on hand in small bills, ones, fives, tens, 20s, no bigger, a couple $1,000 worth, because, if and when the shit hits the fan, cash will be king for a while. You'll want negotiable cash. So small bills, the obvious things, take time to prepare: batteries, food, all the things that you would need in a problem, in a pinch. Look, for me, one of the things that I've tried to do and that's made me successful is try to be objective. And I try to look at things from all different angles. And yes, I sell gold and silver. Yes, I think people should purchase it. But I think the real problem is believing that there's safety, long-term safety in the US dollar. It is massively being debased. And if it's losing 7% per year, the rule of 70 seconds. Do you know what that is, Mike?
I know I've heard it once or twice, but I honestly, I can't remember it.
The rule of 70 seconds is mathematical law, where you take the interest rate and divide it into 72. And it tells you how long before your principal doubles, or in this case, how long before your currency is cut in half. If you take 7 into 72 at a 7% rate of inflation, in 10.2 years, your dollar has been cut in half. And so you're talking about, 10 years from now, 100 grand being worth 50. at this rate. And if that's the CPI rate, if inflation is closer to 15%, as John Williams says, in 4 years, your 4.5 years, your 100 grand is worth 50. And you know, when you look at the question that you put up there, the Kennedy and Eisenhower dollars, they took the silver out of the dollars or out of the half dollars in dimes, quarters, and half dollars in 1965. The Kennedy half dollars in 66, 67, 68, and 69 were 40% silver. But just use a thought experiment. Right now, a dime is worth roughly $2 melt value. So just since 1965, the currency's lost, 20 times its value based upon silver. And this is an asset that is massively underperformed. So I think the idea here is to, whenever you can, however you can, prepare. But it's not just preparing for, the inevitable with food and protection and all that kind of stuff. It's preparing for the dollar continuing to lose value and to get out of harm's way. And so when I tell people to buy gold and silver, it's not to get rich. It's because the government has chosen what all governments have done for literally thousands of years, and that is to debase the currency, to inflate over the hard choices, over austerity, over ending entitlement programs, over wasteful spending. And, this new woke agenda that we find ourselves on is certainly not light on spending, and they will continue to do so. They will raise taxes. They will continue to spend. You'll see inflation. They will not let interest rates rise above 3%, at least not on the Fed's watch. It'll come on some event like Saudi Arabia making that announcement, or some major event where interest rates pop. But the Fed won't let that happen, because if they do, everything collapses. And so it's getting out of harm's way. It's realizing that if you're sitting on a big profit in your equity portfolio, take some profit. It's not a 4-letter word. Pull some out, put it in gold and silver, put it away. Hope you never need to use it. If you do, not just for an emergency, could be an opportunity, you'll be damn glad you have it. And if not, you give it to your kids or your grandkids or a charity or nieces or nephews or whatnot. That's the way I look at it. And I think now is the time to be doing that.
Yeah, I've got some very young neighbors across the street from me. They got 3 little kids. They were telling me just this last week, man, we really didn't know what to buy the kids for Christmas. And I said, well, all kids like toys, but I said one thing that you could start doing now at such a young age is for every one of their birthdays and Christmases, just buy them a little silver coin. You can get it at, your local pawn shop. If you didn't want to try to purchase something, and have it shipped to your house, it's just one coin. Go purchase it at the pawn shop. And I said, drop it in their stockings for Christmas, give it to them for their birthdays. Like your father instructed you, Andy, as a very young man, to take part of your paychecks and to pay yourself first, and stack those coins up so that when you get 40, 50 years old, you have something. When you get to age 18, 19, they might have enough coins that they could help pay for college. You just never know what that could really do for a youngster if you start now real early in their lives. And they said, never thought of it like that. And I said, nobody ever told me with my children anything like that either. And I know some people start, savings account for their grandkids and for their kids, and that's great too. I find silver coins just truly amazing to just hold and look at, and it's something physical instead of just a bank account that you look at every once in a while. So they thought that was a pretty great idea. And, I told them about you, Andy, and how they could reach out to you and start doing that for their young kids. So for those of you who want to contact him, I've seen a couple of comments in chat. It's info@milesfranklin.com. If one of the mods could drop that in there for them so they could reach out. But it's It's concerning times that we live in, and I just feel like we all need to just try to do our best to pay attention to what's going on around us, what's in front of us, and try to protect ourselves a little bit. I'm not saying cash in your 401ks and max out your credit cards and go buy silver with it. I'm just saying if you have a couple extra bucks and you can afford it, go buy a coin or two. Order 3 or 4 ounces for Miles Franklin. Order some silver bars for Miles Franklin if you can afford it. Give it to your kids. Do what you can to help insulate yourself from some of the things that could really be coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, there are very few things that you can give to your kids that have not only intrinsic but also sentimental value. And that's what gold and silver is. And it's not easy for a young kid to blow it, piss it away. It teaches them how to save. And the concept of paying yourself first is very important. And if you want to get ahead in life, it's the only way to do it. And there's something very empowering for a young person to have learned how to save and to earn and to save in a fashion that allows them to truly save it. It's one thing to have money in a bank account where you can go to a cash machine and withdraw it. It's another thing to have gold and silver where you would have to actually go out and sell it. And it's a great way to preserve money, and typically is the last thing people ever sell because it carries sentimental value as well. It's the greatest lesson my father ever taught me, without question. And my assistant, as an example, who I hired as just last year out of the business school at the University of Minnesota, and I said to him, "I'll fire you," just like my dad said he'd fire me if you don't buy every 2 weeks. Period. It's just not negotiable. I don't care if it's 2 ounces of silver you buy every 2 weeks, because you'll reach a point where you look back and realize that you made your mark, that you didn't just work to consume. The way that you become wealthy is to consume less than you produce, and that's the important feature here, is that you produce to consume, but if you want to become wealthy, you produce more than you consume, and you save. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people. And it's a very simple concept. And it doesn't matter how much you put away, but you always put something away for yourself first. And even if it's 1 ounce of silver, that's the only way you ever get ahead. And otherwise you run on the wheel like the squirrel. And as you get older, you always think in life, well, there's tomorrow. But Mike, it wasn't long ago when you and I were both 17. I know in your mind you still think you are. I know I do sometimes, but blink of an eye, it's gone. And I remember looking up into the sky the night my son was born, one of those real surreal moments, saying, please God, let my son be born healthy tonight. And it seems like yesterday. It was almost 22 years ago. Time just flies. So putting money away for yourself in a methodical fashion as often as you can in something like gold and silver, because it's been wealth for 5,000 years and because it's not easy to piss away, is the way that I have found, has really been a godsend for me. And that's why I like to tell people gold and silver aren't investments, they're wealth. To me, it's my wealth. Your investments are what you do in your 401k, your IRA, your stock portfolio, your real estate portfolio, whatever it is. But if you look at one of the common characteristics of people who are wealthy, they have assets. And assets feed you, liabilities eat you. And the way to be fed is to accumulate assets. And it doesn't have to be massive amounts. It can be $100 worth a month. It could be whatever amount works for you. That is the way that you get ahead in life. And if you don't, there will never be a good time to do it. And you just have to force yourself. Every paycheck, I'm putting 2% into something that, even if it's cryptocurrency, whatever it is, it's always best to put something away for yourself before you consume, or you'll end up consuming more than you produce and you'll never get ahead.
I think that's some solid advice, Andy. Here's a question from Cheryl. How does it work once you buy it? I know to save it now, but after shit hits the fan, that's really up to you and the person you're trying to trade with. If you're trying to use silver to trade with to get groceries or whatever, trying to come up with it, at that point, it's a bargaining tool. And coins, to me, I went with the silver coins first, because this silver coin that I have in my hand right here would be a lot easier to bargain with, to buy, a loaf of bread, a dozen eggs, and a gallon of milk, than a big silver or gold bar or bonds, paper, any of that stuff. So I went with the silver coins because I figure I should be able to trade for gas or pretty much anything I really need that's a necessity with a round like that, versus bigger quantities of it. And then Paulina wanted me to ask you, what's the real reason for the coins shortage? Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I think she's talking about the dimes and the quarters and whatnot. It's, I think they're just trying to phase them out. Canada already phased out their pennies. It costs more money to produce most of these coins than they're worth, and I think it's just a way of phasing out the coins, really. And that's different than the physical precious metal shortage, is what I'm thinking she's talking about. There's been a lot of reports over the last year or two of dimes and quarters and half dollars, well, dimes and quarters and pennies really being short. You really never see half dollars anymore anyway. So, look, in my business, we're seeing a shortage in physical precious metals, and it's becoming ridiculously hard to get stuff. We have to buy product 90 days in advance. We have to hedge it, meaning we have to use futures contracts to hedge our exposure because we pay X for it. And if it falls, well, we can't just lose everything in it. And if we're only making a certain amount and it falls below that, now we can't even break even. So we hedge it with futures contracts, meaning we take the opposite side, so we're market neutral. And we have to do that 90 days in advance. We have to run logistics on it, constantly maintaining communication with the Austrian mint and the UK mint and the Australian mint and the South African mint. Where are we? When's it coming? Then we have to track it into the States, and then we got to get trucking and have it trucked to us by a vaulted armored service. And, it's like running a logistics service. That was never the case, ever, ever, ever. And you have supply chain issues. The Austrian mint has been really hammered with COVID. The UK mint ran out of rounds in November and haven't issued any 2022 Britannias. I paid for them in early November. I haven't received them. You're talking almost $1 million that we laid out for that. Haven't seen it. It's gone. I'll get them someday, a few weeks. Don't know. The US mint has been the model of inefficiency for the last 2 years. Getting product is difficult. There are supply chain shortages everywhere. And whether it be in dimes and quarters, to me, there's an ulterior motive to phase them out, or whether it be in goods and services that we use, the distortions that have been created by the lockdowns and by the Fed policy, in my opinion, are only going to get worse. And I think you'll see supply chain issues into 2023. I don't see them getting better anytime soon. So, I think buckle up and start getting out of debt, start accumulating real wealth, start preparing. Buy a couple extra cans of food at the store. Make sure your batteries are fresh. Buy a flashlight, whatever you need to do to prepare. Because when something triggers and happens very quickly, you'll have no time to prepare. You have to be proactive in preparation. You have to be proactive in anything that you're doing for your future. And you can't be reactive. And too many people want to wait until it's obvious instead of preparing. And they look at someone like myself saying this stuff and maybe think, oh, he's just trying to get people to buy gold and silver. We did more business last year, Mike, than I ever dreamed I'd ever do in 10 years. I own this company. I put myself out on a limb because I care. I want to continue to help people best I can. And I say this stuff as God is my witness. I believe it to my soul. And there'd be no reason for me not to. So I think it's important. I think these things are inevitable. Mathematics and economics are a science, although they're not a perfect science. You can't run, mathematics are. You can't run from math. You can't run from economics. Eventually they'll catch you. And I think we will have to pay the toll for living well beyond our means. Look, we've lived well beyond our means due to the good graces of our foreign creditors. And I think those days are quickly coming to an end. And so this is why I talk the way I do and say the things I say. But when you just simply look at where we are in the cycle, we're so far down the rabbit hole that the Fed has no tools anymore. They can't raise interest rates. And where do they go? Negative. This is why they understate inflation. This is why the CPI is a joke. They don't tell us what's really happening. But if we were just simply going back to 1980, the way things used to be calculated, we're running 15% inflation. We have interest rates that are 14% below the rate of inflation. We have supply chain distortions. And we've created half of the money that's ever been created in the history of this country in the last 2 years. These are things that would have been considered unimaginable in years past. And here we are, and yet people still aren't grasping the severity of it. Show me how we get out of this problem. Show me how we stop inflation without raising interest rates. Show me how this ends in any way other than a very hard landing. I don't see it. There will come a time where Mother Nature will reset, and it's kind of like a game of Monopoly. The board's so messed up, you got to just throw it up in the air and start over. In Austrian economics, this is called the crack up boom, where the misallocation of resources and capital create these massive distortions and anomalies. And that's where we are. And we've gone so far down the road with this that there really isn't any way to pull out of it without severe consequences. And I think those days will come and will surprise a whole bunch of people.
Yeah. Again, I'm not trying to spread any kind of fear porn. I'm just trying to spread reality that it seems like every day that ticks by gets us closer to what could be, and I just want to be prepared myself. I want my audience to be educated. If they choose not to prepare, that's their choice, and that's okay. But at least I want them to have some type of real education into reality so that they can make wise decisions. Tennessee Patriot asked a good question before I get to uh, Carlin there. Um, please give us some information about Coinbase. I'm investing in Bitcoin. I'm about to invest half of my savings, and I want to know if that's a good move. Thank you. I don't know much about that, so I'm not going to say anything. Your thoughts on that, Andy?
Coinbase is I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently. It's a publicly traded company. It's the big crypto exchange. I know people that I respect who are very into crypto will tell you that if you don't hold the keys, you don't own the crypto. So you don't leave it even on a place like Coinbase. You don't leave your.
Can I pause you? Can I
Yes.
pause you for just a second, Andy? There was a very important question in the chat, and I want to address it real quick before anybody leaves. They asked, how come there are no prices on your website for the gold and silver? And the answer to that is it fluctuates like every minute, every hour. They cannot put prices because whatever they put 5 minutes ago or an hour ago could it could change drastically one way or another. So you have to call for pricing.
True. That's not quite true. No,
Okay.
I mean, there is. So as an example, we just built a new Canadian website, which we're launching tomorrow for people in Canada, and has prices that change second by second by second. We are updating our website. We're building a new one, which will have a limited capability for people to purchase online with prices. I'll give you the real reason. First of all, before I say that, there are a lot of people on this show who know who Bix Weir is. Bix is a good friend of mine, and almost 2 years ago, I went on his show. It was December 2020, and I told him that I would beat any price in the country. And I've been pretty good about doing that for the last 2 years. There are some things where companies take in stuff and fire sale it cheaper than I can buy it brand new for. So, and I don't have it. So, but 9 out of 10 times will be the best price in the United States. The real reason is that now I've been convinced by the people building my new website that this is something of the past, and I don't really believe it, but nonetheless, that's why I'm only going to do online purchases up to a certain amount. But we experienced so much identity theft and hacking, and it drove me crazy to the point where I shut it down. We were dealing with nonstop hacking, state-sponsored hacking. I met with the FBI, Ukrainian and Eastern European state-sponsored hacking, and to the point where I could spend an hour telling you some of the things I saw, where a house was sold out from under someone and the house was never for sale through a quitclaim deed, where the notary and the title company completely allowed someone to skate right through and receive $700,000 worth of gold that we sent them by stealing someone's identity and selling someone's house that wasn't even ever for sale. I mean, I could blow your mind. But the bottom line is, at that point, I said, screw it. I don't need to be an online company. I'll do it old school. And so we stopped quoting prices. And the minute I did that, the hacking disappeared. These problems disappeared. Now, I realized last year when I went on with Bix that I was missing out on a lot of business. And I understand that. People misinterpret why I did it. I didn't really ever want to race to the bottom with all the online companies because we do and offer a whole lot more. But I realized that people weren't even giving us a chance. So I went on Bix's show, and on all the shows I've been on for the last 2 years, I've said to people, look, we will be as competitive or more so than anyone in North America. On top of the fact that we've never had a customer complaint, a substantive one, on top of the fact that we're the only major company that's licensed and bonded in the country, on top of the fact we're U.S. Mint distributors, one of only 24 in the world, I realize the importance of being very price competitive. So I also realize, to your listener's point, it's not as convenient. And it's a little bit more cryptic. I get that. I understand that. I had to weigh those consequences against the benefits of not dealing with repetitive hacking attempts and fraud attempts. And I'll give you another example. We had a group of prisoners in prison in Georgia who stole, I don't know how the hell they got people's checkbook numbers, checking account numbers, but they did. And they were doing fraudulent ACHs, e-checks, out of prison in Georgia. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the level of craziness that it was. One of the biggest, two of the biggest online companies were hacked. Goldsilver.com a few years ago was hacked, and letters were sent out to every one of their people. When Mike Maloney sent out a letter back saying, if you got this letter, contact the FBI. JM Bullion, a great company. I have nothing but respect for them. They were hacked 2 years ago in February. They didn't realize it until July, told the public in November. Credit card information, all that. You're talking websites that are 6 figures and to build and 6 figures a year to maintain. They were hacked. I think when you look at Fed Chairman Powell, who just came out and said the greatest threat to the U.S. economy is identity theft and hacking of the financial system. You just had 11 countries from around the world meet and simulate a global hacking of the financial system. You had the same group that simulated the pandemic around coronaviruses in 2019, the World Bank, the IMF, the BIS, Schwab, all these people were involved in that. And then what do you know? A few months later, there's a pandemic. This same group just simulated a global hacking of the financial system a few weeks ago in 11 countries from around the world. And then you get the Fed chairman saying it is the biggest threat to our country. And I basically said, the hell with it. I don't need to do online. Now I have acquiesced. I am going to do it. It will be up and running the first quarter of this year. It'll be limited. I'm not going to do large orders on it, but I will post prices up to a certain level. And then I'll say call for information on the rest. So it's not to be less than forthright or transparent. I'll beat people's prices. I say, show me another price that is lower and I'll beat it, or I'll match it if I can, which I almost always can. But it was originally out of just throwing up my arms and saying, I can't deal with this anymore. It's not worth the trouble. So to his point, we've reached a point in life where everything has to be online. I get it. I am moving in that direction. Our Canadian website will be up and running tomorrow morning, and that has prices on it, because we do an awful lot in Canada. So next on the list will be our US website, which I hope will be up and running before the end of the first quarter.
Nice. And that's a great, thank you for answering the question, Andy. Canadian Patriot is from obviously Canada, so I'm sure that'll make her happy where she can access you through the internet. Sorry to pause you. I just thought it was a really good question. I'm sure Tennessee.
One last thing before I'm going to pause you. On that website will be a drop-down box on the Canadian website. And if they heard about us, for example, through Liberty Warrior Nation, they can click on that, a drop-down box where there will be specials, special prices, all of that stuff, and where you will be given credit for anyone that ever comes to us through that. They will have the ability to let us know that's where they came from. So, you know, I like to give back, and I appreciate what you're doing, and the alternative media is so important nowadays, when the information that we're getting from the mainstream is just so biased and so slanted and jaded that it's my honor to give back anything I can to help what you're doing. And so anyone that mentions your show, a small portion of everything I will give back to Liberty Warrior Nation in an effort to keep you guys doing what you're doing. And it's really very important. And I think there'll come a time when people realize even a place like Fox News, which is so much better than the rest, isn't really so balanced, isn't really so fair, and they're missing a lot of points where you listen to information coming on a show like this or others in this space where you can get a better understanding of what's really happening.
Well, I appreciate that, Andy. I'm sure Tennessee Patriot is I'm sorry I had to pause you because he was.
No, it's a good point. It's really important because people
know your thought on information about the Coinbase and the investing in Bitcoin. Anything that you want to throw out there, I'm sure he will appreciate.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about Coinbase. It's the big one. I'm sure, you know, I do know, like I said, the people I respect will tell you that if you're going to own cryptocurrencies, hold them yourself. Don't leave them on a platform like Coinbase. And look, you know, I've been wrong about Bitcoin. I've been wrong the whole time. To me, it's air. It's an interesting phenomenon where digital air is given a value, such an extreme value. You know, I'm the wrong person to seek advice on that, simply to say that it will never be a currency. It'll be a store of value. I think you have the governments really looking closely at cryptocurrencies. This is why they have hired 75,000 new IRS officials. This is why it is now listed on your 1040 form. This is why we've been given instructions that when people sell it, if this new tax bill passes, that we have to fill out a form 8300. They're cracking down on it. And I think that governments don't want competition. And so, look, I think there's nothing wrong with having a portion of your assets in Bitcoin, but to put your life savings in it, to me, is foolhardy. I would look at your assets as a pyramid. And the base of your pyramid would be 60 or 70% of your assets. Those would be things like cash. I guess you could, some people would put Bitcoin in the base. I don't know that I would. I would put gold and silver, cash, paid for real estate, farmland, whatnot in the base of your pyramid. The middle portion used to be things like treasuries that would throw off some income, or utility stocks, like power companies that throw off a dividend. Treasuries really don't throw much off anymore with the interest rates, but call it utility stocks throwing off a dividend. The top 10% of the pyramid, in my mind, would be things like mining shares, precious metals mining shares, cryptocurrencies, things that are speculative that if you hit it, you make a fortune on. And the theory behind it, and this is a theory that the Swiss have used for 300 years, and the theory behind it is that if you lose everything on the top 10%, all of it, you make nothing on the middle 20 or 30%, break even. As long as you're inching along at a 1 or a 2 or a 3% return on with low or no risk on the base of your pyramid, you never go backwards. In a perfect world, you kill it on the top 10, you do great on the middle 20 or 30, and the base of your pyramid is irrelevant at that point. But I think at this point, I have to acquiesce to, you know, the amount of money that has flown into cryptocurrencies is extraordinary, and people have made a lot of money. So I can admit when I was wrong, and hey, not a bad idea to own some, I guess, but I would just be judicious in how you do it. And I would put it up in the top 10% of your financial pyramid. Do not risk it at these high levels, you know, because if something happens, you can really get hammered quickly. The volatility in Bitcoin is extraordinary. Without violating any inside information from people that have trusted me, I will tell you that there are groups that I speak with, very large groups, very well-known large groups that have told me they expect, and I would have expected it to already happen. I have subsequently been told it will happen over the next few months, that they expect a large rally, a generational rally in cryptocurrencies, and then a massive crash. And they wouldn't tell me why there was going to be a crash or when it was going to happen. But a lot of people believe that this will be the mother of all runs in cryptocurrencies. And then there will be, maybe it has to do with government policy or whatnot. And these large groups that I work with have been telling their members to be ready to quickly transition into precious metals. And so this is something that you're hearing all throughout the internet if you listen closely. And so I would caution the listener to inch in, to slowly enter into cryptocurrencies. Don't throw everything you have. Start small, add on the dips, don't chase the rallies, because you're buying something at, you know, at $50,000 a coin or whatever it is right now. If we see a retracement, a lot of people are talking about the potential of it going below $20,000. And, you know, I don't know, could that happen? Maybe. There have been many of those types of corrections already. So be slow and take it slowly, and spend time understanding it and learning it, and get the Trezor, take it offline, put it in cold storage, have it so only you have access to it. Don't leave it on the exchange where it can be hacked. And I guess that's my 2 cents on it.
All right. This question, Carlene's been waiting for a while, so we'll get to it. And then I want to grab another one, which we've talked about before on this show. And I like your explanation of it, so I'll ask it again. What should you store silver in once you get them? Anything special?
You know, just something airtight. You know, when we send them to people, they'll come in tubes or in plastic flips. Silver will oxidize if it's in open air. So you keep them in sealed tubes or in the plastic flips that we send them to you in. If you left that silver buffalo round, if you left that on your desk for a year, within a year it will be half black or sooner. And that's just oxidation. Now there are ways you can get that off, but if you want it to look pristine, you keep them in the tubes or in the plastic flips.
Yeah, I just like holding it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's you have one that you carry around when you play golf, right? Andy?
There it is. It's my ball
Yeah.
marker. Yep.
So do you clean that often then, or
No, I don't. I kind of like this. This is an old piece dollar from 1920. I can't. My old eyes can't see that. 26. That I kind of like the patina on it. I think it gives it a little bit of character. So no, I don't. And all my other silver I will keep in tubes. If you have 100-ounce bars, as an example, that aren't wrapped up, you can just get things like brown paper, like that you would pack a box with, and wrap it in the paper, or put it in a plastic bag, or buy a seal-a-meal machine that you can get at Target for sealing food, and they come with plastic bags. Put them in there and seal it. Keep it away from the open air. Will protect the integrity of the bars.
I got the oldest one that I have, Andy. My friend gave me. It's an 1865. I think it is 1865 silver dollar. It's pretty neat silver dollar. It's all black and everything. But I like the patina as well. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I love the old coins, both gold and silver. It's a piece of Americana. It's people react to it when they see it. I don't know. There's something neat about it, and so I always will have a silver coin on me, and it's a great way to talk to people about real money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a question we ask quite a bit here on the show, Andy, and I really like your answer about it. So one of the questions was, can you please say something about Nasara?
About what? I'm sorry, Nasara.
Nasara. We talk about it every now and again. I just like the way that you talk about it, because I think it makes more sense to me when you talk about it. Nasara, Jasara, whatever you want to call it. The Great Reset. It just seems like everybody wants the right answer, and I don't think they always get what they're looking for.
I think that debt forgiveness is an interesting topic. You hear about forgiving student loan debt. Do you know that it's the largest asset on the balance sheet of the U.S.? The U.S., if you look at their balance sheet right now, the largest asset that they own, above number 2 being military, number 3 being land, number 1 being student debt of $1.4 trillion. They consider it an asset. It's a liability to everyone else, but it's an asset to them. When you forgive debt, you are harming somebody else. Someone's debt is someone else's asset. Maybe on a government basis where the governments will forgive. Some people say that's why those that believe that the cerveza sickness was man-made and released specifically to blow up the Keynesian-based economies of the West. All of them indebted, will all be inflicted the same way, will make everyone react the same way through stimulus and money printing, and blow up the economies and blame the virus instead of the real reasons. And so from a standpoint of forgiving government debt, sure, but what if you're someone who your family spent years accumulating real estate and you own 12 apartment buildings? What happens to you? I mean, is your debt forgiven? Do you then not have to pay the lending institution when the people living in your building aren't paying you? I don't know how I really feel about the ability to pull that off, to reset everyone's debt, because here again, you have assets that people consider to be their asset, and it's someone else's debt. You're screwing someone to help someone else out, and I don't know how that plays out. The only way in my mind's eye I could see it work out is for government debt to be forgiven amongst governments. Personal debt, I can't really see how that would work in a country that's so massively indebted. It certainly is a nice thought, but if that happens, everyone starts at zero. And, is that really what we want? So I don't know, Mike. It's an interesting concept. I could see it on a government scale, but not on a personal scale. When you look at how much wealth is in real estate in this country, everyone who owns real estate would immediately be screwed if you forgive that debt. Especially if you own that real estate and the debt is in the form of leases or rents or obligations that, take the banks out of it. You're screwing a whole bunch of people by doing that just to bail out people who haven't been able to manage their debt.
Yeah, it's something that I know people don't like my opinion of it. I just don't think one Nasara is really going to truly happen. And if it did, on the level that a lot of people are really hoping and praying for, I think it's going to do a whole lot more damage than it would good. That's my opinion. Everybody's entitled to their own. They can wish what they want. Me personally, I just don't see how that really does any good. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't agree that there needs to be some major reform out there. I just don't think that everybody becoming millionaires overnight is one going to happen, and two, if it did, it would have such major catastrophic ripple effects across world economies. Um, it would destroy it would destroy a lot of things, in my opinion.
Of course, you can't create wealth without work, or it just becomes immoral and it doesn't work. I mean, if you could create wealth by printing money, then countries like Zimbabwe would be the richest nation on the planet. It doesn't work. And I just think when you talk about the foundation of this country, you forgive all debt, you're creating unintended problems. I mean, it sounds great for people who are in debt, but here again, someone else's debt is someone else's asset, and it just doesn't work. So yeah, I can see it on governmental levels where all the governments forgive the debt that they have lent to other countries. But as it pertains to debt within the economy, it just, the whole thing has to blow up and start over. And what does everyone, how does everyone start fairly? You've worked hard your whole life, you put away money and everything. Well, we just start at zero. Everyone starts at the same level. That's not what this country's all about. I don't think anyone who's worked hard to obtain something would be very happy about that.
Absolutely. Well, as we're wrapping this up, if you're okay, I could drop the link. We could take one or two calls.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe answer some questions on silver. If you guys have anything you'd like to ask Andy here, I'll take two callers. There's the link, folks, if you want to call in. I think we've had some good questions. We always have good questions during these sessions with Andy, and I appreciate you coming on with us and being here with us, Andy, and just letting us know what you see going on. And it's hard times right now, and a lot of people just have a lot of doubt. And I just feel like if we can give them a little bit of a dose of reality with some hope of, hey, these are the things that you can do to ensure that you're somewhat insulated from anything as it comes our direction. I think that's the best form. We got our first caller. This is Texas Patriot. How are you doing this evening, Jay? Anything as it comes our direction. I think that's the best form. We got our first. Got to kill your YouTube there, Jay. How you doing? There you go. This evening, Jay.
Doing great, Mike. Andy, how are you, my friend?
I'm well, thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to both of you. Andy, I want to say thank you for your great company. You are full of integrity. One of your brokers, David, out of Washington State, has helped us on several times. He is just a man of compassion, kindness, integrity, and has become almost a friend to us. So kudos to you and your company and what y'all are doing there.
Well, thank you. David is one of my oldest friends. One of the things that I have done at Miles Franklin is most of the people who work with me go back to all the way back to elementary school, friends and family. I have found it's the best way to build a foundation of trust. David lived with me for a few years after high school. He's as closest thing I have to a brother. So thank you for saying that. I will let him know that I will send your regards and let him know what you said. But I appreciate the kind words very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. He's really taken care of us and has told us several things in his life, and just a neat man. So thank you again. And Jesus loves you, Andy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that very, very much.
Yes, sir. Well, Mike, I'll jump off, brother. Great to see you. Love y'all, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it, Jay. God bless.
Thanks,
And you too, my friend.
Oops, sorry, Jay. There's always a delay. I'm quick on the trigger sometimes. This is Canadian Patriot. I know she's going to have some questions for you, Andy, on the Canadian website. Hello, Canadian Patriot. How are you this evening?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Shane. Hi, Andy. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy.
I wanted to thank you for your patience in allowing me to ask the questions that I needed to ask. And I wanted to ask, where can I find the link for the Canadian website when it goes live?
So I will send the link to Mike probably as soon as tomorrow, along with our U.S. special, a picture of that so that you can list that, Mike. But the Canadian website will be operational tomorrow. It's through our collaboration and partnership with a very good friend in Canada, and we're very excited to be able to start offering product through this relationship in Canadian dollars tomorrow. So give me one more day. I'll send a link to Mike and he can post it, and you'll be able to start purchasing as soon as tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike, do you know where you'll be listing that when you get it?
Or yeah, as soon as Andy sends it to me, not only will I put it on Facebook page, I'll put it on the YouTube page. I'll see if Deanna can get it up on the web page, and then I'll come on and do just a little short 2 or 3 minute video letting everybody know that I put it in the description. So there'll be several different places that you'll find it there, Canadian Patriot.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your time, and I'm not going to take up your panel because I know there's probably other people with questions. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks for all your information.
Stay warm out there.
God bless.
You too, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Here's the link. I'll take one more call, folks. If you guys have a question, appreciate the good questions. And like I said, as soon as Andy sends me that information, I'll get it up on as many different platforms as I possibly can, so that I know we have a lot of Canadian listeners out there. So we'll get it up so you guys can find that. It'll be easy to find as long as we're not getting blocked by good old YouTube. I see a lot of people jumping in tonight. I never got a notification. My parents half the time can't even find this channel. It's crazy. It is what it is. We just work around it. I'd like to get you on Podbean one of these afternoons, Andy, because over there, I like the fact that we don't have to dance around any of the little code words that we use here. So it'll be fun to do a little session with you over there on Podbean, and then you can
anytime
you say what you feel like over there. I like it. But
anytime.
It's always a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else wants to call in, I'll take one more caller and then I'm going to wrap it up. Fire went out. House is getting cold. Noah's got to get to bed and ready for school tomorrow. So I'm going to get off of here in the next few minutes. If anybody wants to call in and ask one more question, I'll take one more caller. Hooch Pooch says, can you ask Andy if he buys gold?
Sure. We'll always provide a two-way market, always. Whatever they want to sell, whenever they want to sell it, and we'll make sure they get the best bid price in the United States as well. That's the easy one.
So would they reach you through the same email at info@milesfranklin.com? Is that where
Yep,
they get a
and
hold
just
of
put
you?
in there looking to sell some gold blank, gold bars, gold chains, gold eagles, whatever, and we will immediately reach back out and take care of them with not only giving them a bid price on whatever it is they want to sell, but also helping them with shipping, whether it be by registered mail or UPS. By registered mail, we will instruct you how to do it. If it's large enough, we will have UPS come to your house and pick it up, making it a little bit easier. But that costs enough money to where it has to be a little bit of a larger order to make it economical.
All right. Great information. Well, I don't see anybody calling in, so we'll just go ahead and hit final thoughts. Thank you for joining us, Andy. Your final thought for this evening, maybe something that you just want to leave the audience thinking about or just knowing. I don't really have anything for a final thought tonight. My head's just spinning from all the great information that you always share with us on the show. So anything that you want to put out there would, I'm sure they'd love to hear.
You know, I really, I don't have a whole lot more to say as we covered a lot. I just, I thank you for letting me come on, and I hope people, if nothing else, sense my sincerity. I try to be as straight and sincere as possible. If I had to basically leave people with one thought, it's that the Fed can't normalize. They can't normalize without a real hard landing where asset prices return to normal, where over leveraged businesses go bankrupt, where people lose their jobs and their homes, and the elite get about 30 trillion poorer. They can't do it. It won't happen. And I think the economy would go through a very, very mean ringer. And I don't think it will happen. And in that respect, if that's the case, if I'm right, they're going to destroy the value of the dollar. And so do what you can. Buy as often as you can. Get out of the dollar, whatever that means to you. Real estate, cryptocurrencies, precious metals, whatever it is, it's better than staying in dollars that are losing by their own measurement 7% per year. Last month, those numbers were up 0.9%. And so you annualize that, that's 12%. And I don't know. I think if you save in dollars, you're destined to go broke. And look at precious metals as a life raft and escape from that as wealth, not as an investment. When you call my company, we are going to focus on getting you the biggest amount, the largest amount of precious metals for the least amount of premium, the greatest amount of flexibility. It will be nothing rare, nothing esoteric. It will be transparent. I know we don't post our prices, but we will never disappoint on price. And as that nice gentleman said, you know, my brokers care and they're family to me, all of them. Some of them are actually family. Others are my oldest friends in the world. And they understand what we've built and the reputation we try to uphold. And it's just nice to be given an opportunity and a platform to talk on your show with your great listeners. And I appreciate it very much. And we'll always be eager to come back. I'll come back every week if you'll have me and talk about what's going on in the markets and navigate these crazy uncharted waters together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing, Andy and Angel. I'm sorry Facebook wouldn't let you in tonight. Apologize for that. They're all just trying to censor us the best they can, but we'll get around it. So thanks for joining us, Andy. I'm going to go ahead and end it here tonight, folks. Check us out, libertywarriornation.com. So if you couldn't find Andy or you weren't getting the links in the chat, you guys can go to libertywarriornation.com, and in the I think it's the action button, there is a link to Miles Franklin right there on the webpage as well. So we have a link on the webpage. You guys should check that out. We also have our merchandise in the store. We have a prayer request as well. And you can also contact us there as the same place, libertywarriornation.com. All right. We'll be back tomorrow evening, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and 6 Mountain Time. Thank you all. Thank you, Andy. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.
hoping for a sincere performance, but open to finding the moment, to finding out where I'm headed now. Looking for a sign of disaster, so I can make it there faster. I'm weighing the consequences out. I can see in all directions. It's all open to interpretation, but I see colors that are breaking from the other side, the other side. When I make mountains out of summer trails, when I buckle under all the details, I'll keep going till I make it to the other side, the other side. Can you tell me the secret of how you can take it or leave it? How you can blend in with the crowd? I'm so scared, so damn afraid to look. I'm so sick of talking. I'm wearing the words out, words out. I can see in all directions. It's all open to interpretation, but I see colors that are breaking from the other side, the other side. When I make mountains out of summer trails, when I buckle under all the details, I'll keep going till I make it to the other side, the other side. When it feels like everyone's out to get me, I see the river on the back